I had always thought of David as the kind of husband women envied. He was charming, successful in his career, attentive to our 2 children, and the type of man who remembered anniversaries without being reminded. We had been married for 11 years, and while not every day was perfect, I believed we had built something stable, something untouchable. But betrayal has a cruel way of hiding behind normalcy. It doesn't always arrive with sirens or warning signs. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, disguised as late-night work calls or unexplained absences that you dismiss because love blinds you to the obvious. It all began one Sunday morning when I decided to borrow David's phone. Mine had died, and I needed to send an urgent message to my sister. He was in the shower, so I reached for his phone on the nightstand. I didn't mean to snoop, but as soon as I unlocked the screen, a message popped up. Last night was unforgettable. I can still smell you on me. Can't wait until Tuesday. My heart slammed against my ribs. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe a prank, maybe a spam message. But curiosity, sharper than any knife, pushed me deeper. I opened his messages, and there it was. Weeks, maybe months, of secret conversations with a woman named S. Flirty texts. Hotel bookings, promises. Every line was a wound slicing deeper into my chest. When David emerged from the shower, towel draped around his waist, I dropped the phone back onto the nightstand and pretended to scroll on mine. He kissed my forehead like nothing had happened, like he wasn't betraying every vow he had ever made to me. That was the moment my world split into 2, before the message, and after. The days after discovering those messages were unbearable. I went about my routine, packing lunches, driving the kids to school, answering work emails, but inside, I was unraveling. Every glance at David made bile rise in my throat. How could he sit at the table, laugh with the children, and look me in the eye while writing love notes to another woman? I became a silent observer in my own home. I watched how he carefully angled his phone screen away from me, how he excused himself to take calls outside, and how he suddenly paid more attention to his appearance. New cologne, freshly pressed shirts, a gym membership he had never shown interest in before. At night, when he fell asleep, I would lie awake staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying those words. Last night was unforgettable. I couldn't shake the image of him with her, his hands where they had once belonged to me, his whispers meant for someone else's ears. But instead of confronting him immediately, I decided to wait. I needed more than just texts. I needed evidence he couldn't deny. A confrontation with no escape route, so I began to keep records, screenshots of his messages, photos of his credit card statements when he left them on the counter, dates and times he claimed to be at the office, matched against his GPS history that he forgot was linked to our family cloud account. And there it was, a hotel downtown. Same place, multiple times, always on Tuesday evenings. My chest ached with every discovery, but alongside the pain, something else was growing inside me, a hard, unshakable resolve. If he thought he could play this game, then I would be the one to end it. Not with tears, not with begging, but with proof so damning that even he would have to watch his world collapse. I wasn't the same wife he thought he could manipulate. I was preparing to become his reckoning. The first time I followed David, I felt like a criminal sneaking through the shadows of my own life. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure it would give me away. He told me he had a late client dinner, but I knew better. I waited 10 minutes after he left, kissed the kids goodnight, and drove my car a block behind his. He didn't go to the office district as he claimed. He drove straight downtown, parking in front of the Riverside Hotel. My hands tightened on the steering wheel when I saw him step out of the car, straighten his jacket, and check his reflection in the glass doors before walking in. Minutes later, she arrived. Rachel. So the mysterious S wasn't just an initial. Her real name, I would soon discover, was Rachel Saunders. I recognized her from social media, one of those women who always looked polished, flawless, and just a little too aware of her own beauty. She wore a red dress that clung to her curves like it was made for betrayal. From the safety of my car, I took photos. The two of them laughing, walking side by side, his hand grazing the small of her back as they disappeared into the hotel. Each click of the camera felt like a dagger, both stabbing me and sharpening my weapon. I didn't cry. Not this time. The tears had already been spent in the sleepless nights. What I felt now was steel, the kind of cold determination that doesn't crack. When he came home later that night, smelling faintly of Rachel's perfume, he kissed me on the cheek and said, "Sorry." The meeting ran long. I almost laughed at the audacity. Instead, I tucked the photos safely away, my lips curving into a smile that he mistook for affection. He had no idea that every lie he told was just adding fuel to the fire I was preparing to unleash. Soon, very soon, I would stop being the wife who sat quietly in the shadows, would become the storm he never saw coming. I didn't want a messy screaming match where he could twist the narrative and paint me as overreacting. No, what I wanted was silence that crushed, evidence that suffocated, and truth that couldn't be denied. So I staged my moment carefully. Our anniversary was approaching, and David, in his usual attempt to maintain appearances, suggested dinner at an upscale restaurant. "Just us, to reconnect," he said, smiling like the devoted husband he pretended to be. I agreed, hiding my disgust behind a calm nod. That night I dressed elegantly, not for him, but for myself. I wore a navy blue gown and pinned my hair into an elegant twist. I wanted him to look at me and remember the woman he had betrayed. More importantly, I wanted him to realize what he was about to lose. Dinner began innocently enough. He ordered wine, made small talk about work, even cracked a joke about how much the kids were growing. But as I watched him, all I could see were the images burned into my memory. His hand on Rachel's back, the lipstick-stained glass he left behind at the hotel bar. When dessert arrived, I pulled a slim black folder from my purse and placed it on the table between us. His smile faltered. He looked at me, then at the folder, then back again. "What's this?" he asked, trying for casual, but his voice was tight. "Open it," I said, my tone colder than the ice in his glass. He flipped through the pages, screenshots of his texts, credit card bills, photos of him and Rachel entering the Riverside Hotel. With each turn, the blood drained from his face. His fork clattered onto the plate. "Emily," he stammered, I can explain." "No," I cut him off sharply. "You don't get to explain. You get to listen." The restaurant around us buzzed with quiet chatter and clinking glasses. But at our table, the silence after my words was deafening. His mouth opened and closed, searching for lies, but I leaned in closer, my voice low and unyielding. "You thought you were clever, David. You thought you could live 2 lives without me noticing. But here's the truth, I noticed everything. And I've been watching, waiting, planning." The sweat on his forehead gleamed under the dim light. He looked cornered, stripped of his usual confidence. For once, I saw fear in his eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply sat back, folded my hands, and let the weight of the evidence crush him. He thought betrayal was his game. But I had just shown him it was mine to end. The night after the restaurant confrontation, David begged me not to destroy our family. He followed me around the house like a lost child, spewing promises about ending things with her, swearing it was a mistake, saying he loved me. But his words were meaningless, like ashes falling from a burned-out fire. I didn't yell. I didn't throw his clothes into the street like the movies show. Instead, I planned his downfall with a kind of ruthless calm. He had chosen to gamble with my heart. I would gamble with his stability. First, I contacted a lawyer, quietly, without him knowing. I provided everything: the texts, the photos, the receipts. In my state, adultery carried legal weight, and I intended to use it. My lawyer advised patience, to let David's actions dig his own grave even deeper. Next, I reached out to Rachel. It was surprisingly easy. Her social media was a shrine to her vanity. I sent her a message, not as a wife pleading for mercy, but as a woman wielding cold truth. "You can keep him if you want. But remember this, if he lied to me for 11 years, what makes you think he won't lie to you too?" Her reply came hours later, short and shaky. "I didn't know. I thought you two were separated." A blatant lie. I had seen the captions on her photos, read the suggestive comments. She wasn't innocent, she was complicit. But I didn't waste energy arguing. I wanted her fear, not her guilt. Meanwhile, David's life began to crumble. Rachel stopped answering his calls. His co-workers whispered after word spread about his hotel visits. Apparently, someone had slipped photos into his company inbox anonymously. I'll let you guess who. And at home? He found a half-empty house. I had taken the kids to my mother's, leaving behind only his belongings in neat boxes stacked by the front door. On the kitchen table, I placed the divorce papers, clipped neatly with a pen. The look on his face when he walked in that evening, staring at the papers, the boxes, the silence, was the image I had waited for. For once, David couldn't charm, couldn't lie, couldn't swee.